Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cardiff Central podcast. As ever, I'm Harley. I'm joined by Dan as always. No Carwin again this week, but we are joined by probably an improvement, really, if we're honest. It is the YouTube sensation Andrew Forde back on the pod again. How are we doing, Andrew?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me on.
I told you you're always welcome on here to talk Jack Cardiff. So lads, how are we all feeling after the weekend?
I don't think I've recovered yet. I still think I'm getting over it. Like I've watched it like four times now just to check it actually happened in the second half. But
I've
yeah, it was a good one.
I've watched it back and I still thought we'd lose.
Mm,
It's one of those ones I just could not believe it. Um, what about yourself, Andrew? What was your thoughts, sir?
yeah, unbelievable. I just had this inkling in my head. Like when they went 19-0 up, I was like, oh, it's going to be a classic kind of 60 points, and then we'll get like a try bonus point, and we'd be talking about, oh, brilliant that we got a try bonus point. So yeah, really exceeded expectations there.
Absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit more on game in detail in a second. Just a couple of bit of housekeeping for news-wise. So Gav Cooper's leaving his role as team manager, going to Leinster, and he's going to be replaced by Chris Diomedes, who's leaving his role of Pontypridd, which feels like very, very short turnaround, since though he only got the job last summer full time. Any major thoughts on that? Either of you?
I've got I could go on a long run about this, but I'll keep I'll keep it short. Like we don't really know what the team manager does, I don't think overall. Obviously, there's like logistics elements to it and procurement elements. It's not even really about the team manager role. It's not about Chris Diomedes and Gav Cooper. It's more about the fact that like Cardiff have obviously not advertised and interviewed for this job. They've just given it to Diomedes. Like somebody gave me the heads up on Saturday that he got the job. No interview, no advert. It's just been given to him. I think he obviously has come from Pontypridd as head coach, but his day-to-day job was as the WRPA rep, like looking after player development. And like I don't know whether there's transferable skills there or not, to be honest. But just from Cardiff point of view, you want to be like one of the top teams, top clubs in the world is got to be the ultimate aim, whether it's achievable or not. And you're a 13 million pound business, and you can't run a simple HR process of like advertising, interviewing, and then appointing. Like, it might have been Diomedes anyway, and if which case, great. But at least you like done an interview process. I don't know. It's not a massive thing. It's just that like it gives the impression of jobs for the boys, and I just kind of think like. Just why can't we do just sort of basic things all the time? Like this should be easy, like recruitment 101, and we can't do it. So yeah, it doesn't paint a great picture, sort of like governance and day-to-day operations wise. But in terms of the role, it's a like great opportunity for Gav Cooper going to Leinster. Like I'm sure he'd be great there, and Diomedes will know a lot of the boys, and I'm sure he'll get on well with them. And the player welfare stuff that he's got as his background will be good. So good luck to him.
Anything you want to add there, And?
Yeah, no, I don't think I kind of probably a bit more indifferent to it, Dan, because again, I don't really know the whole details. But yeah, I guess it's definitely a concern if it's just kind of been handed to him. I was just surprised. I didn't expect to hear Chris Diomedes' name associated with Cardiff again after all those years. But hopefully it goes well. Again, like you're right, like team manager in terms of the role, it's God knows what actually goes on in terms of other than like admin and stuff. So hopefully it'll be grand. But yeah, it's not the most groundbreaking news Cardiff related.
I mean, let's be fair. I think, given how the last few years have gone, if this is being the big buzz news, actually, I'm quite happy that there's no
That's fair. That's fair.
the club going
Yeah.
bankrupt, are they? But slightly more happier news: Teddy Williams has been called up to Wales squad. So obviously, sad that Ben Carter didn't isn't able to continue with knee injury. I mean, if anyone saw that WRU stash video, maybe Nugget got fed up with him moaning about the number of raincoats and just gave him a good old kneecapping. But it's great for Teddy. All right, maybe disproves our argument that he was seen more as a number 4 lock, but I mean, it's good for him. I mean, he's definitely one of the form second rows up there. Certainly, all those who are fit. And just want to go to you. What do you think about
Yeah.
the call up?
Like obviously, yeah, happy for Teddy. I think he's been really good form. I was like obviously initially surprised he wasn't in the squad. to start with. But it's more worrying. Like Ben Carter being injured after 2 days of training makes you wonder what's going on. And for all we know, could have been injured Monday. So yeah, that is a bit of a worry that how many players are going to come out of this camp now, just absolutely crocked. But yeah, overall, yeah, happy for Teddy.
Yeah, like it's got to be a significant knee injury if they've already decided he can't continue after like a day and a half worth of training or however much they've had, really. Like that, and it's tough for the Dragons, but you just sort of know it's coming for one of our players as well. You're just waiting for the news that one of ours dropped out. But I mean, great for Teddy, really, yeah, really deserves it. It's just hopefully there's no more second row injuries, because with like obviously we're not blessed in Wales for in that position. So I don't really like, we're back to Matthew Screechaw ringing up Corey Hill to see if he's still about in the 4th division of Japan next, I think. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so that was all the news. Not really a big news week, as we already said. Moving on to the Ulster game, as we've alluded to, very stressful watch. Can't believe it, but it was a win. So we've got to be happy. We've got to be happy with that, beating Ulster, particularly how the circumstances of the game last season. I'll be honest, I wasn't watching the first half initially because I was at Dartmouth Food Festival. Saw like all the things coming through, and so it tagged me in saying, "What soft shit is this?" So I went, had a look, went, "Well, that's unbelievable. That's an unbelievably soft try." Walked through, watched the end, and then just there sat on my phone. Strictly's on the background, whilst nudging me, going, "Hey, do you see that?" So I went, "No," which is no one takes a lot for me to get away from sparkly dresses.
Yeah, it was.
But gentlemen, what are your thoughts? I'm sure you said. I know Dan, you were there, and were you there as well?
No, I wasn't there, unfortunately. So I was watching on my phone, and I did do the kind of initial thing of when Ulster went 19-0 up. I turned it off because I was like, oh, I can't be watching this. And then end of the first half, I got it back on, so it was still 19-0. Never would have thought it would pan out like that. So yeah, caught the second half, and yeah, pretty memorable day. And like you said, especially compared to last season, the game there up in Ulster was a nice little bit of revenge.
Yeah, it was just the first half was awful, like really poor, and it was actually quite a good atmosphere at the start of the game there as well. Like people were up for a good crowd. Ulster, obviously, they've got quite a lot of fans based over here, so they always bring decent numbers. But like once you got the yellow card, I thought the yellow card was a bit harsh actually, Evloyd. Like there was no warning from the referee, just binned him straight off for being offside, and you see quite a lot of people hands in front when you're on your try line, so it was a little bit harsh. But we didn't help ourselves massively. Like Ali Davis kicking infield long, and we just invited them to score the second try, and then the third try. It's not a bad kick from Sheedy, but once Werner Cock decides he wants to keep it in, and he's sort of halfway up the south terrace flapping it back in, like you're not a lot you can do from that point. So we just didn't impose ourselves on the game at all in the first half. We didn't get through anything that we are quite good at in terms of challenging in the air, going through phases. Line out was sort of functioning, but there was a nervousness around it the whole time, which meant that we didn't really get settled in for the first 2 or 3 phases and would inevitably get turned over. And then we started like forcing things, and it was like experienced and key guys. Ray Lilo coughing the ball up, Josh McNally lost one. Ben Donald tries to force an offload to Alan Lawrence, and you're like, these aren't the guys that are making the errors usually as well. So it was the only redeeming feature was the scrum was fantastic in the first half. I think without a scrum, it would have been Ulster would have been away and done by halftime, really. But then second half, kicked a lot shorter and competed in the air to actually win the ball back. We managed to sort of go sort of 7 or 8 phases into attacking phase play and put ourselves into position to hurt Ulster. We're added a little bit more depth to our midfield to give ourselves a bit of time on the ball. And yeah, Ulster, we were helped because Ulster looked really nervous in that second half. They stopped playing entirely. But what we didn't do against, particularly Scarlets at home, and to a degree against Edinburgh and Glasgow as well, is be really clinical when we had those opportunities, and that's what we were. We won the big moments in the second half, whether it's Ewan Stevens' class finish, it's Botham and Stevens holding up the replacement lock for Ulster over the line. I mean, that's a try every other day of the week. Still don't know how he didn't score that. Then there's Rory Jennings kicking long and chasing, and Ulster sealing off, and Sheedy 100% with some real tricky ones off the tee. So once you win those big moments and you're clinical with your driving line out, it was a really good performance, not a classic Cardiff performance. And I think Sherratt was rightly, still a little bit disappointed with the performance overall at the end, but we like to Steele and Ospreys saying like we'd literally found a way to win, which isn't something that we've done like the last 18 months or so. Like we'd have definitely lost that last season. We'd have never got ourselves back into it. And also, again, same as Scarlets away, we managed that last 10 minutes really well. Like because when we went 21-19 up, said on the terrace, we thought, oh, we need to score again here. Like otherwise Ulster are going to get something in this last 10 minutes. But we kicked long, defended really well. They resorted to trying to kick penalties from inside their own half. That's where they were. So, yeah, really, really good win. Not a great performance, and we're still searching for like anything over a 60-minute performance, really. But a win is definitely a win, and we needed that to finish the fixture block on a good note as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as speaking of managing that last 10 minutes, Ulster had 85% possession, but at no point, weirdly, at no point did I feel they were going to break through. For me, it was just worried that we'd give away a stupid penalty like we've done in the past. I mean, I kind of weirdly when Doak went for that long range penalty, I thought, oh, here we go. And then as soon as he missed it, I went, I don't think Ulster have got I genuinely didn't think they mentally had it. I still thought we'd somehow lose because it just always is. And I think someone brought up, I think Lauren Jenkins on Scrum 5 brought up the stat of that is the first time Sam Grove White has refereed Cardiff and they've won.
Yeah, 11 games in a row. But
which it becomes. I don't really like ref discourse, but when a mainstream journal is pointing something like that out, it's hang on, yeah, that is a bit weird.
And like I thought we had the rub of the green a little bit second half, to be honest, because particularly the Thomas Young maul try, if that was against us, I mean that stopped about 4 times before he got to the line, before Young finally went round the corner. So it was nice to, after particularly Edinburgh, Forde knows of being up there and probably launching some stuff for the ref. We haven't had a lot of luck in that regard this season. And Welsh sides generally, I think it is quite easy to referee against us because nobody really expects us to do anything in some of these games. So it was nice to get a rub of the green. And on that Doak pen as well, what really rubbed it in is he kicks a short, and then Sheedy's return kick, putting them back, the lineup back in their half as well. That's got to be a real blow when you're just seeing that ball fly back over your head and bounce out.
Returned with interest. That's always good fun.
It was really good.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to Sheedy, I don't think he's fully changed my mind on him as a goal kicker, but that was a hell of a goal kicking performance because they were not easy kicks. And as I said, I just want to shout out your doppelganger, Roy Jennings, who seemed to add something when he came on, which I thought was quite nice because I felt like Ben. I don't know what it was with Ben Thomas. I don't think he was as brilliant as he usually is. I don't know if that was just tiredness, one mind on one foot in the Wales camp or whatever. But yeah, weirdly, it was like 2 different teams defensively as well. In that second half, like the first half, that second Ulster try, the first part of the Postlethwaite tries, it looked like they didn't want to tackle. It was like a full 15-man game of your man.
I think that comes obviously it was a man down at the time, but on the Jennings and Thomas sub, like a lot of credit to the coaches for the way they use the subs, like bringing the timing of the Cardiff bomb squad, as I'm now referring to them as, but bringing them on, just after we score, they're still a yellow card. The extra like impetus of them coming on, that lifted the crowd at the same time. Seeing Young and Botham in particular come on with the pace and the energy they had, and then it's Ben. I think he still played all right. Ben Thomas all right is still better than most people's like good games. But
when I say he wasn't as good, I mean instead of being like 8 or 9, he was 7 or 8. Yeah. It was.
But it's still a brave call from Jockey to hook Ben at 60 odd minutes and bring Jennings on. But it worked out massive. I think the back line did just need a pair of fresh legs in there, and obviously Jennings doesn't. I thought it was a slightly odd one in the first place to have Jennings above Hamer Webb, because Jennings doesn't really offer much positional flexibility in terms of, he's exactly the same as what we've already got in terms of Ben Thomas. There, you're not changing up how you're going to play with him. If Lilo was struggling, I don't know what we would have done really. But like,
it would have been Ben Thomas the fullback, I reckon, and
Some-
Brady in.
it would have
That's
been
a huge lot of changes.
yeah, it would have been a big shift, a bit of a botch. But for Jennings to come on, and yeah, he really offered fresh legs, and I think just a slightly different perspective on the kicking game, of the way he nudged it long and asked questions of that Ulster back three, which hadn't really been tested, coming counter-attacking from deep. And they weren't, the fullback looked a little bit shaky. I'm not sure, isn't it McElroy, I think his name is. But yeah, it was that bottom squad in particular, and it's good to have a Cardiff pack that is actually going to like shove one up the jumper and give it to an Irish side, because I don't know. I went back and just flicked through some of the old fixtures against Ireland teams, and I can't remember the last time we'd done a job on them up front.
So, anything you want to add on specifically the Ulster game on?
I was just going back to the whole Sam Grove White stat. I think those last couple of minutes, that was the thing that was just stuck in my head, was we've never won a game under Sam Grove White. So here we go. He's going to find any excuse to penalise us. And so, yeah, thankfully it worked out. But still, yeah, there's something, you make a good point. There's something worrying about, I don't know the exact fixtures he's refed us in. I think he refed us Bath at home last year in the Champions Cup, and obviously that was a bit of a two-way game where it could have gone either way. But yeah, no, I just think like there's something about our team this season, some of the fixtures where it's always fixtures where we performed best have been when we've kind of had a bit of a scare. So like Scarlets away, kind of going, what was it, like 15, 17-0 down quite early. It was kind of that scare got us back in the game. Glasgow, to an extent, obviously, I think they were far too ahead and far too good a team for us to properly get back. And then you look at like the games like Scarlets at home, again, it was here or there between us. So we never really got that proper scare. When in a half time up against Edinburgh, we had that scare against Edinburgh in the second half. I say scare, but like they definitely performed a lot better in the second half than they did in the first half. So it's almost like, yeah, we need something kind of to encourage the boys, which isn't great going forward. But I think, yeah, getting that win is something momentum-wise that's going to be huge going forward. And especially, I think, like, end of usually block one, we either get a bit of a battering or we're playing a team like the Dragons where we're kind of expected to win. So it's kind of a bit of a better momentum booster to beat a team like Ulster.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So as I said, that ends the first block. So we are a third of the way through the regular season of this season's URC. So just a little bit of lay of land. So we've had two derbies, won one, lost one, but because of us actually getting bonus points and Scarlet struggling, we're currently top of the Welsh Shield. So that's always quite nice before we go into our double header, before we get through 5 of our games by New Year's Day. In terms of the main table, the important one, we are currently in 8th after having a couple of weeks in second. So we're on 16 points, just behind Ulster and then Scarlets on points difference. So what have we thought? So 3 games won, 3 games lost. We're in the middle of the table. Does that seem about right for everyone?
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the disappointing one of the fixture block is that Scarlet's home game massively. Like that should have been a win, and I think if we'd won that and gone 4-2, you think that was a really, really good fixture block. You'd have definitely taken that at the start of the season. But 3-3, yeah, it's probably, considering there's been quite a few injuries and we've basically run the same sort of 25, 26 players for the entire like block of fixtures, and that we have had to bed in quite a lot of new faces within that 25, 26 as well. There's sort of been 8 to 10 new players or players that joined like late last season. I think yeah, you can't be unhappy with it, certainly. I think it is like the lowest you can get. I think it's, probably somewhere around a 6.5 out of 10, where you would say it was solid enough, but there's definitely room for improvement. But uh, I think the really good stat is that we're 16 points now after the 6 games, and that's plus 10 on the equivalent fixtures of last season, and that's what you're looking for, is that progression, and turning close games from last season into results this season was what we wanted to do, and we've largely done. We've done that on the whole. I think if you take the last 20 minutes against Glasgow and Edinburgh out, we've been really competitive for the entire fixture block. So yeah, can't complain too much, but also there is a nod that there is still ways to go to be really an impressive side.
Anything you want to add?
Pretty much, yeah, agree. I think obviously Glasgow champions, so you can't really expect to beat them. I think in hindsight, it was kind of really big, our result against them last year. I know they had a weaker team last season when we played them, but that was such a big result in hindsight to get a bonus point away to the eventual champions that it would have been a big ask to beat them this season. But yeah, no, I agree. Scarlett's game was very much the one that got away. But yeah, no, overall pretty positive, but yeah, definitely room for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I agree. We definitely should run Scots. The other one for me is getting that second half against Edinburgh. For me, it just looked like, I don't know if it was some of the decisions going against us just deflated the squad, or what, or if, maybe it was a game too far for some of the players. But yeah, for me, I felt like for me, Edinburgh didn't play like a team who deserved a bonus point win, and we didn't play like a team who deserved to get nothing out of that game. Certainly not in the first half. So that was a bit disappointing for me. But enough of so we can always come back to negatives at the end. But since we've got you on, Andrew, I was just wondering now, if you were going to make one of your wonderful compilation videos of just these six games, what sort of moments would you be there like that? Right, I think this is what I want the YouTube audience to remember forever.
I think the easiest answer based on the game on Saturday is definitely Iwan Stevens' try, because that was just an unreal finish. I think you tweeted it, Dan, as well. It's clear from his rugby league background that that's a proper rugby league winger's try, the way he just kind of finishes it. And yeah, I think overall, like, scrum and maul's been quite positive at times. I did write some notes, so I'll just double check. I think some of the play against Scarlets away was pretty good, particularly Mason Grady's try. Like, the way we just got through, the amount of hands the ball went through. I look back on that, I think, yesterday, and I think 2 phases before Mason Grady eventually gets it and scores, he's one of the ones in the ruck. So kind of the work rate there is pretty phenomenal. But yeah, I think one amusing thing I noted as well was in that Scarlets away game, when they scored that opening try through Max Page, Johnny Williams went and kind of shoved or bodied Ben Thomas immediately after, and it was kind of satisfying. It was completely unwarranted, but it was quite satisfying then that Ben Thomas got the eventual kind of winning try, and it was Johnny Williams who was the one who wasn't able to stop him. So kind of, I liked that at the time.
Yeah, I think. Sorry,
I've got a list
of
Forde of top options. My number one, Alan Lawrence greatest line out throws compilation, because he was back at it again on Saturday. I think it wasn't quite straight, the one that he threw in, but I think just those, however many it is, 4 or 5 on repeat for like a good 2-3 hours. That's views. That's millions of views there. Sorry. And then I've got Ali Davis box kick compilation, which is it's a bit more boring, but I think it does just say to a wider point of, like, I will certainly hold my hands up, and I think there were others as well, that when we signed Ali Davis, it was a bit like he's like sort of got a reputation as like a boring 9, really. Like, he's not like X Factor guy, is he? And especially coming on the heels of Thomas, it's like that is a shift change. But Cardiff's kicking game has actually been really impressive in this block. And when we've got it right, it's been the main reason why we've been in games. And I checked on the URC website, and we are 6th for kicks retained in the league in this first block with 18. And I mean, it's boring, but it is like a massive part of the game now. How many times you kick, where you get them back. And saw on Saturday, like we kicked too long in the first half, didn't compete. Ulster had free ball from inside their 10-meter line and went and played with it. Whereas second half, we kicked a lot shorter, got a few tap backs, a bit more unstructured, and then we can go to work. And when you've got Grady and Ewan Stevens and Cam Winnett and Ray Lilo, like, we're going to work quite well in that unstructured play. So big 80-minute shift for him as well on Saturday, as we didn't go for Mulder at all. And so I think just a nod to him, not necessarily grabbing headlines or doing much, but becoming quite a key part of the new and improved Cardiff, where we're a little bit more street smart maybe in this first block.
I think another highlight moment for me, if as long as you ignore what happens once the ball leaves his hands, is Evan Lloyd's interception and break off the Edinburgh, because that was great. That was just absolutely glorious to watch. It was my moment of the week for Rap last week. The Ewan Stevens try is my nomination for moment of the week this week. So please do check it out on YouTube, on the Rap YouTube, and also the Rap account shared. So if you thought that was one of the best moments in Welsh rugby, go give it a vote, just to end the monotony of all the Scarlets fans somehow rigging the vote so it's always them who win. So I'll put out a couple of feelers for questions. So one question comes from Nathan Law on the Twitter and he's wondering, do you think's been the most impressive signing so far in this block? Who do I guess first?
I think there's naturally, I think you'd get recency bias in terms of after Ewan Stevens' performance on Saturday, you'd naturally pick him. But I think it's got to be Josh McNally in terms of what he's offered. It's been years since we've had a kind of proper nuts and bolts second row like him, that kind of just does all the stuff that we've kind of lacked through the lightweight locks we've had over the years. So yeah, the amount of like shifts he's put in each week, there's a clear difference. And part of me is just thinking we're still quite light at lock. So in terms of recruitment, if we could somehow duplicate Josh McNally, that would be a great strategy going forward.
Yeah, it just is McNally, isn't it? Like, he's just like 21 tackles on Saturday, and I think his legs had gone by about 55 minutes, to be honest, and he just carries on anyway. But he's been great. Yeah, great set piece wise. You can see the weight that he offers at the scrum time. Big maul defender. I think he's been really good for Teddy Williams as well. He just allows Teddy to be himself without worrying about, just getting caught up in scraps or getting too stuck in the tight breakdown areas. It basically allows Teddy to have almost a free role, essentially. But he's obviously also great leadership wise as well. You can see him whenever there's a little break in play, he's chatting to front rowers, he's chatting to even out the backs, just sort of getting people's heads in the game focused. So he's been great for that. I think I mentioned Ali Davis. We've obviously, Andrew mentioned Ewan Stevens there. I think Dan Thomas deserves a shout as well, though. Has been a different type of seven, as we said on the pod before. He's not like your out and out jackal guy, but he's still top of the URC turnover list after the block one with 11. And he sort of dovetails quite nicely with Thomas Young in that we can now sort of change our back row play slightly, and it allows, when Thomas Young comes on there, it allows him to make even more of an impact, because they've been sort of, even though we were 19-0 down, Thomas was still beating a few guys up. Particularly that first try and how long it took them to get over. We didn't let them across easily. That wasn't a soft try, so they still had to punch quite hard to get to 19-0 at that point. And then Thomas Young can come on and with his pace and athleticism and really cause them different problems, which they take a minute to adjust to. So I think Dan Thomas has been really good, and in the like Sheedy has divided opinion. I think is probably the way I put it. You know, fly halves always do this. They're always the first ones that take the flak when something goes wrong, or the ones who get the glory when it goes right. But I do think he's added a lot to the attacking game in phase play. There's obviously his goal kicking has not been fantastic, and there was the defensive lapses against Glasgow. But just in terms of the confidence that he gives us to go phase after phase, and we're not panicking, we're not making rush decisions. He just looks like always composed on the pitch, that nothing ever phases him at all. So I think that's been really good for Cardiff this season, knowing that we can exert pressure over long periods without necessarily going anywhere, and just biding our time and either winning the penalty or inching away up the pitch slowly. So no, on the whole, like, McNally's been the clear standout, but the recruitment's been really good so far. There's not been a new signing that hasn't made an impact, I don't think.
I mean, I think even Ed Byrne, who maybe isn't exactly what people were expecting, and he did have, he's had a couple of tough times, scrum time and things, getting away a few soft penalties, which I'm still convinced is him just trying stuff that used to work for whilst he was at Leinster, but now you get picked up on it because you're playing for the Welsh side. But still mostly good. He has offered that when he has been on the bench. He's offered that lead. He's offered that sort of experience and leadership towards the end. Because you mentioned about recruitment next season, Andrew. So another question from the Twitter is from Simon Jones: is who are with a few people likely to be out of contract? Who are the priorities for the first 3 or 4 people? Would you say we absolutely need to make sure they re-signed ready for next season?
I think the obvious one is I know he's out of contract at the end of the season, but the obvious one I think is Ben Thomas. I think I was kind of thinking this the other day. I saw Gatland said he's the best back in Wales at the moment, and I wonder not to dismiss what Gatland was saying, because he's absolute class. But I was recently reading Dan Biggar's autobiography, and he was kind of mentioning how Gatland sends these mixed messages out when someone's out of contract to kind of persuade them to go either one way or the other. And I wondered if that was kind of a strategy from him, because he's under 25 caps, and obviously even if he plays every game now, he won't reach 25 caps, if that's a way for encouraging him to stay at Cardiff. So if that is, that's one of the few positive things Gatland's done for a region in recent times. But yeah, I think Ben Thomas is the kind of priority. I'm sure Dan knows better than me who's going to be out of contract at the end of the season. Like Seb Davis is out of contract at the end of the season. And although I kind of have mixed views as Seb, if we're struggling with recruitment with second row, which we consistently have over the years, you kind of got to look at retaining him. But I think Ben Thomas overall is the priority, I'd say right now, that if you get him down on a long-term contract, then he's already performed so well over the years. He's got such a high ceiling. He's still quite young, that I think going forward, that would be huge, having him nailed down at Cardiff.
Yeah.
Any other names?
I absolutely agree with that. Like, I think it's a statement of intent as well. If you get Ben to stay, then that's he's probably going to captain the club at some point. Like if he stays, and he's somebody you can build around, whether it's at 10 or 12. He is the big. I think the other player that I would say is key to my mind. I think we really need to renew Thomas Young. I just obviously we have this back row conversation all the time. We've got them coming out of our ears and stuff, but he just, like I said earlier, with the pace and stuff, we noticed this season just how much he offers when he doesn't play for a couple of weeks and he comes back into the side and you're like, oh yeah, I mean, this guy's a joke. He's not at the start of his career anymore. I think he's on the top side of 30 now, but he's still quality week in, week out. And as much as it's his personal loss, and I don't massively understand why he hasn't had any look in at all. He obviously isn't getting a look in for Wales. Alan's just not going to pick him. There are legit reasons around the quality that we've got there, and Jack Morgan and Tommy Reffell being great, but to not even be rewarded with just a call up to the wider squad suggests that he's not really in the thoughts of Gatland at the moment. So it's a big for us then that he's constantly available for us, barring injury. He can do full pre-seasons, he can be there through international windows working with the young players. And if you're somebody like Lucas De La Rua, like there's nobody going to be better to learn from than Thomas Young. So that's somebody who I would, whether he will or not is another question because of that lack of international recognition. You know, if you're him, I wouldn't blame him at all if he was decided to say, like, no, bollocks to that, I'm off, lads, I'm taking, because I mean, there will be teams queuing up for that. You look at the impact that like Jack Willis has had at Toulouse as a sort of classic, more British style open side. That you know they're not, France tend not to produce open sides in that like all out jackal manner where they're like more classic, you know, link players in attack and that sort of thing. But it's worked really well for Toulouse, so you've got to think some of the other French sides might be eyeing up a couple of guys to come across there, or even, you know, if he goes and experiences something in Southern Hemisphere, or if there's a decent monetary offer from Japan, then he might be all over that. But yeah, I think Thomas Young would be top of my list with Ben Thomas there. Generally, though, I think we're in a decent position, sort of squad building wise. Obviously, we tied down like they're on the front row and a lot of the young players last season. All of those young guys who made the squad signed new contracts last season. There's, I think most of the guys out of contract will be sort of what you maybe class as more squad players, aside from Ben and Thomas. So there's a bit of flexibility there for Jockey and Darren Allinson to really shape the squad as they want, I think. And the big question marks will be like Josh Adams, Talupe Faletau, big earners, big names. What do you want to do with them? But yeah, I think that if we can like concentrate on key guys like Ben Thomas and Thomas Young, then we've got an opportunity to really kick on and add proper depth and target individuals who will make a difference, not just signing players to be bodies in positions where we don't have a lot of people.
I don't know. As I said, I don't know if these particular players are necessarily out of contract, but would you say there was scope for bringing someone like a Max Llewellyn back home, or you know, maybe bring Chris Junzer back in, you know, obviously left during his academy days, both that second row, or is Chris Junzer not necessarily that second row we need really? Because like I said, he's very much more that typical athletic.
I think that I think ex-Cardiff players do have to be, or like Welsh exile players do have to be high up on your recruitment list. Like, you know, you can only have a certain amount of non-Welsh qualified players. A lot of the players that do make it, you know, when they leave Cardiff, Shunza, Maxwellin, slightly less so Maxwellin, but I think more people like Shunza, Lewis Rees-Zammit would have fallen into this category. Emmanuel Fabroso would have as well. Louis Hennessy, Bath, somebody like that, are players who were top players in our academy, and we did want to keep them. You know, Sheedy would have been another one, but they have good offers from good schools across the bridge, and then they end up getting snapped up by whichever English club is sort of close by. So going after those guys in the, you know, we bought Steph Manuel and Tom Bowen back this season a lot earlier than we would have, but there's a couple of guys still floating around in that early 20s category who we could go after. And then there's some guys who have never been in Wales but are Welsh qualified. You know, I look at somebody like Bryn Bradley at Harlequins not getting a massive amount of game time despite Esther Hazen leaving there still. And you wonder, you know, would he fancy coming across? We've already got Gwilym, that would be a bit of a selling point as well. There's Freddie Thomas, obviously, is going to be talked about a lot. There's Zach Wimbush, I think, has been identified at Exeter as well, part of the England under-20s squad last season, but is Welsh qualified. So, yeah, those are the guys that you really have to target, and then you complement them with a handful of quality non-Welsh qualified players. Is realistically the way you want to go about it. But yeah, I don't know contracts. I imagine Shunza is still contracted because I imagine Exeter have got this weird trick of sort of rolling contracts on for like 15 years, but they've only signed one contract when they were 12 years old or whatever. But I think one player who would call into that category who would be interesting to keep an eye on is Jared Evans, who, if he's presumably has signed a 2-year deal, which is largely standard, hasn't played a massive amount, but showed on the weekend that when he does play, he's still obviously quality. Tinas Tabia is presumably out of contract with us. So yeah, that would be a name that I would potentially go for. I don't know if Andrew might know a bit more about Max's contract situation or not, but Yeah, that's a player who I would be interested in returning to Cardiff, certainly.
Yeah, and when you any names you can think of, but Welsh qualified, non-Welsh qualified, you'd quite like to sign?
Well, if it was who I'd quite like to sign, I think there's a long list of All Blacks, Springboks, and what. But like, yeah, I'm not too sure. Again, like it's stuff like naturally, I think all the regions are looking to be linked to like Freddie Thomas, but again, I think he's going to fall into that kind of lock six hybrid that I think is probably not what we necessarily need right now. And yeah, I don't think there's anyone huge. I was going to bring up Bryn Bradley, but I think Dan covered that quite well. But yeah, no, it's very interesting to see. Like, obviously, there was that link to Joe Hawkins a while back, and I don't know if that's just again one of those kind of things of. I think the media quite like the whole Joe Hawkins not being able to play for Wales thing as a way to kind of link any sides to him in Wales, but I'm not sure if Joe Hawkins would necessarily be someone that would be, as in, I'd happily take him, but I don't think he'd be what we'd need. It would be kind of long term wise. I think when you've got Ben Thomas there, kind of being that kind of 10-12 link player, it's how do you get both those players to have game time? So it's definitely a case of we've got to be kind of pragmatic with who we sign. I think Jared Evans is a good example of someone who's still got a few years left in him and could link really well with if De Beer ends up leaving, could link really well with kind of having the choice of either Jared or Sheedy to kind of push each other on and both pushing for Wales kind of on the outside looking in. So yeah, I really would be kind of happy if someone like Jared was to come back. And I've heard him speak on podcasts about how much respect he has for Cardiff, but also how homesick he is in London. So if we could take advantage of that, that wouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it also gives me the wonderful mental image of 20 minutes towards the end, 20 minutes from the end of the game, and the opposition just look up and they see Jared Evans and Johan Mulder coming on for Ultimate Chaos Rugby. So any other points for this first block that we want to say? So we said, I think we're sort of okay. I think you and Stephen's choice probably one of the moments, even if it is the recency bias. One big talking point that a lot of people have been discussing with me sort of privately and on the rap is the defence. Clearly there's been some issues with tackling, targeting, and Sheedy. Do we think it's necessarily a system error, or do we think it's just lots? Is it just players getting used to Mellon's system, where he's full-time coach? Is it just a few technical issues, or is it actually something we might have to worry about in the longer term?
I think overall, I'm not going to claim to know a huge amount. I wouldn't want to be in Gethin Jenkins' shoes, but like I think the number of the turnover of players we're having each year, it's kind of difficult to implement something concrete that's going to work in the first block of a season, especially with them being part-time last year. So I just think you kind of need to take into account, obviously there's been talks about Sheedy's defence. I think particularly it probably had nightmares of that Glasgow game with Tuipulotu running straight down his channel the whole time. But you got to kind of appreciate that Tuipulotu is a ridiculously class player, and that I think that's not to say that Sheedy did his best or anything, but yeah, I think kind of going forward is something that the amount of times where we've played games where we've just been absolutely battered and we've had no look in whatsoever. I think to kind of compare that to this block where we've had wins, there's been mixed defence performances, but overall, I'd say there's a lot to work on that could come positive after a few games. The familiarity of players who've not played with each other, the more they become familiar with each other, the better it'll get. So I wouldn't say it's something to worry about too much now. But when you hark back to times like that Benetton away game where they put 60 on us, like Glasgow putting 50 on us, Scarlet's putting 50 on us, I think got to kind of appreciate how far it's come from there. I know I can appreciate that Glasgow put a lot of points on us, but it's I wouldn't worry too much about it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Dan.
I absolutely agree. Like, I'm not concerned about us as a defensive side at all. I'm not concerned about Sheedy as a defensive 10 really either, to be honest. I think you take that half against Glasgow out, and he's been fine defensively. You know, if he was a really bad defender, we'd be sitting here now talking about how Stuart McCloskey absolutely ran the show for us. You know, he's an absolute quality player, really big physical presence, but we didn't really see anything of him, like especially in the classic 12, channel where I'm sure that they would have said to Stu, like, go and have a dig at Sheedy early doors and see what happens. Like, but um, I've said this before on the pod, but Gethin's going to run a similar style to Sean Edwards, and that's what we're seeing. Is quite like is quite intense in the blitz. It's sort of organization wise, it's not even particularly matter. It's just get in line and get off the line. And I think what we're seeing a little bit is there's been a little bit of fatigue at times where we've only had that small group of players, and that's counted. I think you look in the first half against Ulster, and if you just sort of you look at the shape of the defense is really good actually, but it's they're working so hard to get in line and come off the line quickly, and I think they're just losing body shape a little bit, and we're quite upright, and if you're going up against some physical guys, they will just nudge you back there. But overall, the shape's actually been quite good. It's just been largely individual error. There's not been any shape. We've not conceded an easy try where a guy's ghosted through the middle with nobody's laid a hand on him at all. We haven't, had such an obvious mismatch where a winger's just stepped round a forward in the sort of 13 channel. All our soft tries have been because of missed tackles, really. So, or either that, or one or two soft ones on Saturday were kick chase, which I don't know who looks after that, to be honest, at Cardiff at the moment. I don't know who's doing transition stuff, or the Evan Lloyd overthrow at Edinburgh, which is a set piece issue rather than a Gethin Jenkins issue. So, as Andrew said, there's definitely, it's only going one way, but I think it's at a decent base for Gethin's first block as full-time defence coach. And like, it's not, there's also, it's not been something that we've probably been able to focus on because, Cornel Van Zyl would have wanted a lot of time for set piece and forward based stuff, which I think has paid off massively. Like, if you had to say, I didn't mention him in the new signing thing, but he'd be up there for most important new signing, looking at the way that the maul in particular has suddenly become a weapon, and defensive maul is pretty good. So he's obviously taken a lot of time, and the amount of new players in that attack, that they'll have done a lot of work with that as well. So as the season goes on and the attack settles in, and it looks like the set pieces at a decent level now, they can put a bit more work in, like the next few weeks now during the autumn on defence, and hopefully we'll see the benefits of that through December, Jan.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. So there we go. So no need to worry. So
if it always goes suddenly bad, don't tweet Forde or something. Don't tweet me about it. Like, you can take the blame.
All right, so we'll do some discussion of the rags and some looking forward in a bit. But just a reminder, if you do enjoy listening to us all nattering along, please do like, share, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review if you can, and check out all the Rap YouTube channel for instant reactions. The ones that myself, Dan, and Sean from the Women's Podcast did after the Ulster game have been very popular. So if you want to see more about Andrew Forde and you're not already subscribing to him on YouTube, please do. Those videos get me through some difficult waits at traffic lights. Not when I'm driving, honestly. I do not condone using your phone while driving. No matter if a team is playing and you're stuck in a 20-mile tailback. But that's a story for another pod. Moving on, so just quickly moving on to the Rags, because the Rags keep on winning. Dan's out as the pod sort of official rag correspondent. How was the game on the first part of the double header on Saturday?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna be a full-time Rags fan now, to be honest, because you just never lose. Great. Bridgend this week and started really well, went 21-0 up within about 15 minutes. Then basically stopped playing for about 40 minutes either side of half time. Bridgend pulled it back to 21-14, but really, I mean, they'll be desperately disappointed they didn't put more pressure on Rags in that period. Some good rearguard defence from us, but just could not break the cycle of them being in our territory and pounding away at the line. And then just like that, the game switches. We stop them scoring in the corner. The ball comes to Tom Bowen, who just from literally the corner flag on the right wing at the very bottom of the river end, is suddenly his legs are going like Roadrunner, like they're just sort of blur as they're going up the pitch, and he's beaten about 5 men, and he's on halfway, being tackled, recycle the ball, goes left, and Derry Cross scores in the corner. And from that point on, it was all us. Then finished 47-14. Yeah, odd game in that it didn't really feel like, it was sort of like the Edinburgh Cardiff game in the sense that we were Edinburgh and Bridgend Cardiff, and that we've won quite comfortably, but it's flattered us. I think the scoreline in the end, Bridgend will be disappointed that they weren't able to convert more pressure into points. But as has been sort of the case the last few weeks in particular for the Rags, they've not put in anywhere near an 80-minute performance. They've been under par for quite a lot of it, but all they need is sort of 10-15-minute spell, and they'll take the game away from teams, such as the quality of the players and also the fitness of particularly the academy guys. And when you've got like Lucas de la Rua and Big Mac and that coming into the side as well, against a team that Bridgend, I think they only had maybe 1 or 2 Ospreys Academy players in there, so the majority semi-pros. It showed in that last quarter, really. Great finish to the block, another 6 points for the Fishy side, top of the Super Rugby Cymru by 2 points, I think, above Ebbw Vale at the moment, into their own autumn international break, but still with this sort of nagging feeling that they're probably only at about maybe even 60% of how good they could be this season. So yeah, loads of positives again for the young players involved, but still only going to get better.
Have you been keeping up with the Rags, Andrew?
Not too much this season. Of course, I like check the scores and stuff like that, but no, I haven't been to a game, which is a bit of a shame. So I should probably get on that. One of my mates played for Cardiff last season, Johan Hugendorn. So I went down every time he was playing, but yeah, I haven't had the proper chance to this season. But it's nice to keep an eye on them, especially as an ex-Glantaf boys. Plenty of Glantaf players in the team this season. So yeah, it's just great to hear how well they're doing. It's kind of working that relationship with the first team quite well as well. That hopefully won't be long to a few of those players kind of come up and play a few first team games.
How have we got rid of?
I'm glad that, as with Carwyn being gone, we're still getting the obligatory Glantaf mentions on the podcast.
There's a never-ending conveyor belt of Glantaf fanboys appearing.
So we're going to move on. Moving on briefly to sort of a look ahead, ready for the next big block of fixtures. We're not going to go too far in depth. I imagine we'll do a pod a bit closer to the game against the Dragons. But this is the time of year when everything gets a bit stop-start. We're switching between URC, it'll be Challenge Cup this season, back and forth. So just a quick run through the fixtures. So 30th of November, we're hosting the Dragons in the URC. Then following week, we're away to Leon, then home to the Cheetahs, which is a return to one of my first games at Cap when I could drink, which was very good. Which was a very good time for me. Then we've got the return fixture of the Boxing Day game at Dave Parade, hosting the Ospreys New Year's Day. Then it's away to Perpignan before being home to Connacht. A very exciting European clash where we get to play teams we don't play week in, week out. And then before finishing the break for the Six Nations with hosting the Sharks. So how are we feeling about that sort of block of fixtures? If you think we feeling positive that we can get a good couple of results there, continue on?
There's a few good fixtures there. I think naturally you'd assume with the Sharks, with our unbeaten streak against them, that should be an easy win. This will come back to haunt me. Someone will clip this up. But yeah, no, there's some fixtures in there that I think with the kind of momentum coming on from the win on Saturday, if there's some sort of like kind of momentum going forward, there's some real kind of battles there that we won. But yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of the European fixtures as well. not so much. I think a Cheetahs game kicks off at 8 o'clock on a Saturday, so sound like a grumpy old man, but I don't know how fun that game's going to be. But yeah, no, it should be quite good. Yeah.
I've got images of Forde like tucked up in bed with his hot chocolate watching the game. Yeah, there's a real opportunity in this next block of fixtures to like build on what we've done, because after the Six Nations, if you look at those fixtures, it's just a horror show really. So like we've got to capitalize now on what we've built in this first half of the season, and then just sort of cling on to anything really in that final part. But that game against the Dragons offers a great chance to start it well. We know that we've got a great record against them, and sometimes they do just roll over for us. But if you can repeat something like Boxing Day a few years ago, where we put together a really good performance to kick on, that'd be great. European ones are interesting. I think the squad management will be interesting, I think, over this next block, because I imagine how it goes is that well, first of all, there is a general misconception that you have to rest your Wales players the week after the sort of international block, but that's not strictly true. It's not like when there's the week before where they're in camp and we can't pick them. They are available to us immediately after the internationals, but just generally you opt to rest them then. But I think probably what happens, because it's a derby, is that Jockey asks those guys, even if they've played all 3 tests, to come straight back in and play against the Dragons, and then we sort of rotate a bit over the 2 European games, where we'll still put outside strong enough to win those games, because I think having a crack at Europe is a really good opportunity to go quite far into the knockouts. But yeah, there will be some element of rest and recovery for the internationals over those 2 weeks before coming back in for the Christmas derbies then. And then I think if you can carry some momentum through those first 3 games, Dragons again on Boxing Day. I think the Ospreys game on New Year's Day is absolutely massive. Like, we always struggle against them, particularly at the Christmas game when the weather is usually horrible, and at least we'll be playing on our pitch this year, but we're usually on some sort of bog at the Liberty or at Bridgend. So I think that's the big red pen circle. I'd love to win that one of the next fixture block, and then the last 2 European games do enough to get through. And the Sharks one, like I fear that I'm going to have to clip that 40 thing up there. So, I think we won't have the Welsh internationals for that one.
I think there is an extra week before the Six Nations.
I don't think that. I think the Six Nations starts in January next year, because it's so early on that. I think it's the Friday, the 31st of January, the first game of the Six Nations is. And it's Saturday the 25th, I think, isn't it, that we're playing the Sharks. So yeah, we won't have, unless they're released to us, which seems unlikely, we won't have our internationals for that one. It obviously then depends on sort of what side the Sharks are bringing over to us, because if they rock up with Khaleesi and all them, and they got Lucaniuam and Mapimpi and all these sort of lads, then that's taking a piss a bit, really, isn't it? Maybe they should opt not to do that, but I don't know what their European fixtures are like beforehand, because I think they're in the Champions Cup. Do they get in there because they won the Challenge Cup last year? Is that how it works?
Yes, yeah, there'll be Champions Cup, yeah.
So they might have 2 tough games and opt to rest their guys as well. So it'll depend mostly on what they want to do, really. But yeah, if you look at how many games is this? 2 Dragons, 4 Europeans, Ospreys and Sharks.
That's it. I mean, there's 3 derbies.
Yeah. So if we're taking, I think we've got to aim for sort of 5-6 wins there, really. I think there's an opportunity to do that. You can beat the Dragons twice. Theoretically, we could win all of our European games. Going to France twice is tricky, but we know that they don't really care for the Challenge Cup at all. So, particularly the
Sharks are playing Bordeaux the Sunday before we play them.
Oh, that's
so it'll be a short turnaround.
Yeah, that might mean that they rest a few,
but they were away. But they are away, so they're already up in the house, so they might not have the travel issues.
I bring everybody.
And they came for that. They're home to Toulouse. The week before that, so that again, big game.
Yeah, so
it'd be interesting to see if they do actually want to go for if they are targeting Europe.
If you write off that Sharks game and you write off one of the European games potentially,
I've got a feeling it might be that first one against Leon. Like I feel like this is part of my conspiracy hat coming in now. But I do think the real reason why the big French sides don't seem to want to travel to to Wales, particularly in the first part of the Challenge Cup. It's a way for the EPCL to keep them interested. They think, here you go, have a nice winnable home fixture to start off with, and then you're basically through to the knockouts.
I like that. Good conspiracy theory. That I might run with that. Might be able to rugby QAnon.
Less far-fetched than Nuggets going around kneecapping people who complain about the stash.
But ultimately, the next fixture block for me, the sort of make or break fixture is Ospreys, and that's the one that I think if we win that, then everything else will probably be quite a good fixture. Everything else will be quite a good block. But if we lose that one, then it'll be another. Oh, it was all right, but damn it, we should have won that one.
Well, I mean, that block, we've got 5 more home games, 3 derbies. So, 2 of those 5 home games are derbies, the away derby as well. If we want to be saying we're the best Welsh side, should be winning the derbies, even if the Dragons have improved a lot. But I also feel like you can see there are still some of the same old frailties with them. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It'd be interesting to see how close to my prediction Cardiff end up at this point. But that's the thing. Andrew, any other points about Cardiff Rugby you want to make before we sign off?
I don't think so. I think everything's been covered pretty much. I think as you touched on, it's kind of a weird halfway house now where you're just looking, it's a month now till the next game. So you're just kind of, you don't want to get too optimistic now and be too positive because it'll just all come crashing down. But yeah, no, I'm kind of looking forward to hopefully not so many Cardiff boys getting injured for Wales. So it's inevitable now that the amount of players that will be included against Fiji and an angry Fijian side, that could be a disaster. But yeah, no, I think everything's been covered quite well.
Dan, anything you want to?
No, all good for me, Tap.
Right, and then is there anything either of you two want to plug that you've released out onto your socials or various platforms that you do aside from the podcast?
Well, I think I posted a video about an hour ago on YouTube of overhead kicks in rugby. So if anyone wants to watch that, please do.
I'll be straight on that. You say, Dan, what about yourself with the Cardiff Rugby life?
I got a few analysis bits for the next few weeks. Got a piece on Alan Lawrence, a Millard/Stevens doubleheader, and a Teddy Williams piece as well. So sort of some standout players from the first half of the campaign, and we'll probably attempt to cover whatever Wales throw up in the next few weeks as well. Could be all sorts.
Yeah. Speaking of, obviously we are in an international break now, so we still haven't decided what we're going to do with this break. We're hopefully going to try and get a couple of guests on to do some interviews. We might do some coverage of the Wales games, depending on how utterly depressing it is. If it's not that bad, then we might talk about it. If it's infuriating, we might talk about it. But as always, keep your eyes and ears peeled from the usual things. And thank you all very much for listening. Thank you, Dan, for being a co-host as ever, and thank you, Andrew, for stepping in and giving us your thoughts on everything.
Thank you for having me on.
Yep, always a pleasure. All that's left to say is ta-ra for now.